or they came out, did an estimate, and never called me back. The next thing that is video.
Yes.
My goodness, we struggle with this all the time.
Oh, does anyone have any recommendations?
Tag
the page.
I'm one of those terrible people that needs to know all of the data.
This actually turned into a heated discussion here because
let's move to my favorite topic that I don't talk about on the show very often because I'm just interviewing contractors, but that's marketing. You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Aline, the co-author of the books Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors and The Best Known Roofer. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the leading digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Do me a favor. Leave a comment, leave a review, hit the like button, maybe follow, share, subscribe, depending on where you're at. And if you want to take the conversation beyond what you're just listening to here, go to Facebook, type in Roofing Success, and join the Roofing Success Facebook group. Today, I have Kaili Smith, the Vice President of Marketing at Job Nimbus. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
So now that I'm part of Job Nimbus, I can say this, we did this really cool study, right? Really cool. How do you frame it? How would you put it? How do you put it into words? The study, what is it?
So this is our benchmark. Yeah, we did a big old survey. This is our roofing benchmark.
It's a roofing benchmark survey. So called Peak Performance. And you could go to jobnimbus.com. You could get a copy of it for yourself. Let's talk a little bit about what went into putting this together and the thought process and then we'll go into kind of what the results were that came out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has actually been on the Job Nimbus wish list for years. Ben's really want to do this. I really want to do this. Brad has ton of people have been we need a baseline. We need a baseline for this. And there are a lot of really cool roofing benchmarks out there. I know that Roofer Contractor Magazine does one every year, and Roofer's Coffee Shop does one, Metal Shop. There's all these really cool things about materials and ordering and pain points that we have in the industry. What we wanted to focus on with this study was business best practices and business benchmarking. So with your marketing, your cash flow, your production, your sales, all of it, all the pieces that go to the business, even your team and culture. So we wanted to get that all together so people could have a baseline for where their business actually is and where their business processes are, if they're in the high revenue, high reviews, and where they stand. And key takeaway items for each section on how they can become best in class.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing in business ownership. You look at your competition, it's kind of like social media, right? Where you're looking at them and they're always man, I see their trucks everywhere and maybe I'm competing with, but how are you really stacking up against them in so many different ways? And you had mentioned high reviews and high revenue. Just talk about that a little bit and how the survey was put together in terms of that.
So what we started with, we asked a lot of qualitative questions. We asked about 45, and thank you if you took the survey. We really appreciate you. I know that was a time commitment. And we got about 3% of the industry to answer it, which was huge. So super excited about that. So we got all the answers and we started splitting them based on, what does best in class mean? So we were trying to focus on the high revenue, the people being 15 million or more. And then on the reviews, because reviews equal money, if you have more 5-star reviews, you're going to get more referrals. You're going to get more people seeing you on Google. You know how it goes with Roofer Marketers. The reviews are gold, especially 5-star ratings. So we went in and quality checked all of them that said they have 5 stars. Turns out they all were. So thank you for being honest in the responses, and split them. So based on what do they do, the people who have all the 5-star reviews, what are they doing? Where's their average? Where are they averaging out? How many services are they providing? What kind of marketing do they have? Same with the high revenue. So we try to split it between the average and then the high performers.
Nice. And it's a big difference, man. I mean, we see it all the time. I talk about it all the time. It's the psychology of people, right? And so it's people trust online reviews as much as a recommendation from a friend or family member. It is insane.
Yeah.
So, and then that's probably, I would bet that there's a direct correlation through time of the highly reviewed companies turning into high revenue companies, right? Like
they were both very, very similar. I think there were only a couple exceptions for the people, and the people that were highly rated were brand new that weren't already in the high revenue. So that absolutely plays a huge role.
Well, cool. Let's kind of walk through the things that happen in it. And the first thing you guys kind of asked about were services, right?
Mm-hmm. So we wanted to find out, if you just have one focus, you're just roofing, you're just replacements, whatever that is, if will adding additional like impact you negatively? If you're trying to do 4 to 5 things at once, is that a negative thing? Turns out it's not. Like, you have to be smart, you have to be careful. Like, we just had our crew event, and one of the guys said he has like this association deal with this guy that does the sealant on the roof material, on the roof to keep
rejuvenation kind of stuff.
Exactly. And he's like, man, that's a win every time, because we just add on to additional service, or even they do that little thing with our company, have a good experience when they do need it replaced. Who's their first call? It's us, because we took care of a little thing. So people do snow removal, holiday lights, they do all sorts of different things, and they get a lot of revenue, and it helps with that seasonality, because we know how it goes. When it starts getting cold, you can't go rip apart a roof. No one wants that. So what are some ways?
I'm in Minnesota. We're still having snowstorms. You guys are too in Utah, right? Like, it's crazy.
Right. Exactly. So it sucks. It sucks when the season stops, because then you have all this business in this small window, and then you have very little happening after that. So what can you do to kind of make up the difference and spread out that seasonality a little bit? So it's interesting. The people that are creative and try and find ways to put it in, they have more revenue and they have better ratings, partially because they have better hooks, because not everyone needs their roof replaced, but they need it repaired a lot. So what are you doing to help grab those little jobs?
For sure. The repair side of it is that's the big one for me, and like what people can do. But in the seasonality, snow and ice removal, ice dam removal was huge in Minnesota this year. It was a very, very big service. Siding, you could still do in the wintertime in a lot of markets like that. I know a lot of our contractors that are in northern markets that we work with through roofer marketers. They'll kind of switch over that way and it looked like gutters was another really big secondary service that people said that they did, right?
Oh yeah.
Sticking in that exterior contracting, right? That's the trilogy, I think. It's roofing, gutters, siding, right? Those fit together so well.
Absolutely.
Going into the next kind of part of it is when you started talking more about where jobs were coming from, right? So residential, insurance, retail, commercial. What were some of the observations that stood out to you in that area?
So none of that actually was a surprise. Like, with the way that the industry's been set up and what we know, it tracked pretty well with what we were thinking. And I think everyone kind of who sees that slide is like, yeah, that tracks. Like, that makes sense with what's happening.
Yeah, for sure.
No crazy surprises there.
Yeah. So so something for people to think about is, what additional service could you offer or ask for in your services, in your service offering in 2023 that might bring in that other revenue, right? I do know other contractors that would disagree, and they say, hey, just really get niche focused, right? And that could work too. But I think there are more contractors that have the second, third, fourth, fifth options for companies. Really, you can additionally increase the long-term value of a customer in that regard.
Yeah, and we see that. We see that in the industry right now. People are trying, like, hey, how do I break into solar? How do I, do this kind of thing? It makes sense. Like, you want to keep your business alive and well.
Yeah. Solar and roofing is definitely coming together. It's a marriage that's really happening right now, and especially in the southern markets. Let's move to my favorite topic that I don't talk about on the show very often because I'm just interviewing contractors, but that's marketing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, one of the things that stood out to me in this, and it's kind of a weird thing, but average lead cost came in 38% of of companies said $0 to $10 per lead cost. Now, after reading more in the report, I it was like a lot of people are relying on their review or on referrals from friends and family members. So I'm sure that is where that comes from. That's what I'm making an assumption into the numbers, into the data. I noticed that it was what was it? Nearly 90% had a lead cost of under $500. And there were these outliers over here in like the 900 to 1,000 or more range. It was like 10. Yes. I don't know whether these people are what they're doing or if they're calculating this properly, but it was real interesting to me that it was that everything was below that $500 mark. And I've actually had this conversation recently with a couple of contractors and then a couple of coaches in the industry. And we were talking about lead cost. Lead cost is one that gets funny, right? It's like, I think when you guys did the live, I listened to with Ben and his brother, and it was like, people would qualify their leads differently in the way that they reported them, right? It was like, well, it wasn't a quality lead. And I've had this conversation with Chuck Toki and all different sales trainers and Adam Bensman and all these guys. And I'm like, there's a lead. Then to me, it's the journey is prospect. That would be a kind of where they are qualified. They're actually looking for a service that you provide and they're in your service area. That's more of like what maybe someone would say a qualified lead, right? You'll get the person that's looking to get the roof on their dog shed repaired, right? Like, or on their doghouse repaired. Yeah, that's not a prospect, right? Like, but so in there, so there's a wide range here. Over 50% of roofers are spending $50 or less per lead, but I don't think they're doing a lot of marketing. What do you like? How did that come through?
So this actually turned into a heated discussion here because one of the things that we track as Job Nimbus, like cost per lead, cost per sales qualified lead, cost per opportunity, cost per close. We track all these different stages of someone coming in, and it's really interesting because the stuff that you don't add on your monthly cost, so like, Google, Facebook, that's easy. I pay X amount and I get X amount of leads every month. What about your website? How much did that cost? What about your organic? What about your referral requests? It's not that they didn't cost money. It's that there was this upfront cost and investment that's set up. Like, we talk, later on, he talks about automations, right? Like, they don't cost money every month, but they did cost money to get the right system in place and to get set up. So I think it's really easy. And any stage of any growth of your company can be guilty of this. Like, it's really easy to take, this is how much I paid this month. This is how much my leads are. But we don't take in consideration all the time and effort that came into the branding, that came into the website, that came into the SEO. And those things are essential because that actually does make your cost per lead cheaper ongoing because you're not relying on paid so much. Like, you have a good motion in place, but it still costs money. So it's a fun discussion to see how to.
Another thing I just thought of is I would assume that a lot of people, a lot of contractors that do a lot of canvassing and door knocking would put that in the zero category. But there is a cost to that. So
time.
Yeah, exactly. Time, commission, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. But so for people, this is where, for us, I mean, like, you could get Google local services ads leads as, down in the $25, $30 range, depending on the market you're in, up to the $75, $85 range more. And they're kind of in that range. That's a lower cost per lead, highly qualified person. But one of the metrics that I don't think, and you mentioned it especially with the new reporting system in JobNim, is where you can break it down into sales qualified lead and all these different things, is the cost of the appointment is one thing that you want to look at, right? And so that appointment cost is where you want to make, maybe your lead cost is low, but it's a bunch of people reaching out for a free roof or a free roof. Like, hey, we're having we're doing a a free roof for someone. Enter your name and email here. That's a lead.
Yeah.
It's not a good lead probably, but it's a lead, right? So
they raise their hand.
They raise their hand. And so it's kind of challenging along the way. But now, and the things that we deal with a lot is marketing automation, right? I believe that there's it's like a baton handoff between sales and marketing, right? In a relay race, and both are holding the baton at one point in time. And that's where automation can turn the on so many things. Only 46% it actually surprised me that it's this high, Kaili. 46% of companies reported that they are using some sort of marketing automation in that. And so I think that's a place where people can really focus in.
Oh yeah. Cause this is a business problem, period. This isn't just the roofing industry, is that marketing to sales handoff. And it's so frustrating on both sides when sales is like, I want more leads, and something wasn't handed off just due to human error, or something wasn't firing off correctly. And it's frustrating marketing because I'm bringing you leads. Why aren't you calling them? So it's a frustrating handoff when it's not set up right. So it's really, really important to get your marketing and sales, even if that's the office manager or owner and your sales rep, like you make sure that handoff is solid and automate it, because it doesn't matter how amazing you are or how amazing your office manager is. There's always going to be room for human error when that happens. Like it takes one bad day, it takes being sick one time or whatever it is, and then it gets thrown off for like 2 weeks, and that sucks. And that's not fair to them who's doing a great job. It's not fair to you because you're losing out on revenue. It has to be automated. So to just take out the human error piece, because you have the best employee on the planet, you're still going to mess up sometimes. So automating it helps a ton.
For sure. And it's way too easy now to automate. Take some time up front, take some building it out, but then it just works and it happens. And that customer experience when they're getting that text message that says, oh, my appointment's in an hour, someone will be there, right? Like there just little things along the way. Your materials have been ordered. Just want to let you know we're working on this. Your job is, you're on our schedule. Here's a reminder for being on our schedule. Hey, thanks for being a customer of ours, right? These little communications that can be automated along the way are awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm going to share my favorite one a customer shared with me because I think it's such a cool idea. So they had 2 automations set up at Job Nimbus, and one was for a high communication customer, like a customer who wants constant updates, and one for a low communication customer. Someone who just wants to I just want to know when you're coming to my house. I don't care about anything else. And they could tag it in Job Nimbus and choose which funnel they had. So the customer got to tell them, this is how much communication I want. And they had to set it up automatically. So they didn't have to worry about it. They didn't have all the calls coming in their office anymore. And I loved that whole concept. So like that kind of creativity and getting people to take care of your customers the way they want to be taken care of, automating it makes it so you can. So that's the thing I loved with that.
Just add a tag. Low communication, and just have that conversation with them. Hey, how do you want to be communicated with? And then the automations can work from there. That's awesome. The next thing that is video.
Yes.
My goodness, we struggle with this all the time. Getting people to produce video, they overthink it like crazy. No one wants to look bad. They don't want to just pull their phone out. These things are amazing, right? Like you just pull your phone out and start talking. And the trust level just goes through the roof in your marketing when you are on camera talking. So what was it? Less than 50% of roofing companies are using video in their marketing? Yep.
And that's because we did this test, and everyone's surprised when I share this. So we love using video because it builds trust right away. It's super engaging. It works on ads. It works on customer communication. It works on so many levels. And I think there's this assumption that you have to be more polished to do video. You have to know exactly what you're saying and you can't make any mistakes. Here's the funny thing. When you make mistakes, this is actually a behavioral science study. When you mess up on your words or stutter something, it makes people trust you more. Because they know it's genuine. And that's what people want to connect with, is a genuine person. They want to get your vibe. They want to know who they're going to be working with. What's the kind of person I'm going to be doing? So it could be from your phone, it could be from your computer. We tested this with our sales team and our success team. where we did the same video we did in a studio, and we did it just on the computer like this kind of recording. This kind of recording way outperformed the studio one.
Outperforms
it. And that's the thing. People, look, we have a hard time connecting in person more and more in our business because it's just becoming too difficult to connect with everyone as quickly as we want, especially when you guys are dealing with busy season and you don't have time to go to every house yourself, or your sales guys have to like filter and prioritize who they want to go hit up when it's crazy time. So having this kind of like just this real quick, hey, I'm just connecting with you. I'm a human being. This is my company. This is what I want. And it really helps just build some trust immediately. And don't overthink it. Like,
don't overthink
bullet points, download a free tool if you need to, and just record. And it builds the trust so fast.
We had a marketing manager reach out to us, and I understand what they're doing. They're really trying to perform for the company that they're working for, right? And so I'm very sympathetic to that. But it was like, how much should the owner be involved in the video versus the production team versus the sales team versus the claims team versus, and what percentage? And like, it was a very detailed conversation or ask, right? And then please provide like reasoning to who should be in what video the most. And it's just way overthinking it. Talk into the camera. It's not like that's what works. Talking into the camera, being yourself, not the very produced videos have their place, right? Yeah. Especially if you're doing any TV or OTP, a lot of times on YouTube ads, Facebook ads, you can have some really cool produced stuff. But organically, it's just someone talking into the phone all the time, and it works so well. Vertical video versus the full frame, full width. It's a little bit of a personal thing. I know a company. I interviewed the owner of Rabinski Roofing on our podcast here. His sales team does a customer testimonial with their phone, selfied out, like, hey, I'm here with the customer, and it's like a terrible shot. Like, it's the worst videography in the world. But they have hundreds of these on their social media. The social proof is through the roof, right? It just drives that. So part of the study was in-house versus agency. Man, do it in-house. To me, it's really should be done in-house. I was very surprised in the study, and I mean, we're kind of going along on social media or on marketing, but social media usage in the study, I thought that was going to be a lot lower.
Yeah, and to clarify with that, I think a lot of companies have a page. I don't know how active they are on it. That's something I want to iterate on for next year. Is how active are you? Like, are you posting 3 times or more a week, 5 times or more? Like, get more activity. I think a lot of people have a page. It's just how active are you?
Yep.
But the ones that are active, as you can see, like social media marketing, if you're active, you're top of mind more, so you get more reviews.
That's right.
The whole point of marketing is to be in the right place at the right time. Always. Like, if they're like, oh, I need to fix this, you pop up. Like, you want to be that creepy person. It's like, I just said this out loud. It just came up. That's how you want your marketing.
Exactly. And then on the other side of it, it's occupying mental real estate, right? Like, so you are the company they think of when shingles blown off the roof. I know who to call. That's done by getting them to know you beforehand. So that would be really interesting in the frequency of posting and that and the types of posts that they're doing. That would be super cool information.
That's what we want to iterate on next year. It's like, okay, we have that baseline now. Now, what exactly does that look like? What's activity level? What's post type? Yeah, exactly.
And so 84% had 1 to 25 leads. So, that could be skewed on the low end, but there were some people there was 9% of the study had 26 to 50 leads coming in per week with their social media. Like, there is a huge amount of power there, right?
That's gold. And here's the thing that people need to realize. You want to be easy to find and easy to tag. Like, if you have a bunch of happy customers, you already have good reviews, what do you think is happening in these community Facebook groups and these DMs where they're like, oh, does anyone have any recommendations?
Tag
the page. Like, so it's super valuable on the referral side. Like milk that for all it's worth. People are always asking for recommendations, especially in community groups. So just be very active.
For sure. And then moving on, it was 25. It was the talking about online reviews or asking about online reviews. Just over 25% of roofing companies have over 100 online reviews. Those 3 digits make a huge impact. Getting to that 3-digit level makes a crazy impact. It's insane. One thing that I'll have conversations with contractors about, and they're like, how many reviews should I get? So the first thing, this is something that everyone can do. When you're sitting in your office or the address that your Google business profile is located at, so your home, your office, wherever that address is, while you're there, type in roofing company near me and go through the maps and go through the first 20 or so and look for the number of reviews of each of those contractors. If on the high end, everyone in your area has 50, like there's 3 companies with 50, 60 reviews, then your first goal is 50, 60 reviews. So you look at the high end number, look for the outliers, because if there's like 3 with 50, 60 reviews, and then there's someone with 350, your first goal is to just get above the 50, 60 reviews, right? Yeah. Then your next goal is to try to catch that person. But if you are just thinking of it in terms of numbers, 3 digits makes a big psychological impact.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid of negative reviews. This is where, like, you don't want a ton of them, but 1 or 2 is actually really good for you to have because, well, if 2 things happen. Again, it's that whole, like, if someone like stutters or messes up, they seem more authentic. If they have 300 5-star reviews, people are going to think they were paid for. They're not going to think it's genuine. If you have a couple really bad ones in there that you respond to well and professionally, that actually bumped up your trust even more. So don't be afraid of that bad review. Just respond, be professional, be kind. And that actually helps people trust you more when they're reading the reviews because, like, okay, they didn't buy all their reviews. They had a couple bad ones and look at their response. It actually helps build your trust even more. So don't be afraid to ask for reviews in case you get a bad one. Those are good. Not all of them. Don't get like all bad reviews. Then you need to look at your process. But if you have like 1 or 2 bad eggs in there, that's actually a good thing because people then know, oh, they didn't buy their reviews. So that's just know that. There was a study done that I read that the sweet spot was between 4.3 and 4.8. Mm-hmm. Was like where humans, like, especially when you get into like hundreds and thousands of reviews, like a product on Amazon that has 10,000 reviews, right? Or something like that. If it has 10,000 5-star reviews, you're like, yeah, this isn't right. One thing that Google will do, though, it will give you a 5-star rating, even if you have negative reviews. So I want you guys to know this. You just have to have enough. You have to skew the average above 4.9 and it flips to 5, right? So you can have negative reviews and a 5-star rating. So you can do both, you don't have to concentrate and focus on that. So moving on to sales, most of the companies had dedicated sales teams, it looks like, right? I wonder if that was, and those were like the high revenue for sure had dedicated sales teams. It would be interesting to know how that structure was, right? If they're 1099, W-2. I think W-2 is becoming more and more popular as an option for sales reps versus the old 1099 model. What were some of the other things that you noticed in the sales in the sales questions that were most kind of impactful or could be impactful for the audience? There was a lot of interesting information in there, especially if you're looking to like higher ups and later on in like the production and cash flow, it talks about salary ranges, things like that. The thing honestly that stood out the most for me was the good, better, best estimate use. Because to me, I was surprised how many people weren't using that because that's kind of a easy win for you, especially if you're trying to get people to buy more and to spend more money, because most people choose best when you have a good, better, best presentation, right? So I was kind of surprised how low that number was. I was thinking it would be a lot more, but if I'm part of a couple roofing Facebook groups and there are like, how do I set this up the right way? I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this is one of the low hanging fruit items that people can earn a lot more money per job just by taking some time to build that proposal out in a good, better, best way.
Yes, and that the using proposal software and things like that probably helps with that, to visualize it for people. I know one company that we work with, they close at a ridiculous, like they're almost, I think they're almost at 60%. It's crazy.
Awesome.
And they do good, better, best. And it's the framing of the conversation. They get to, this is another thing that I hear in this from the sales side a lot, is, well, we're competing on price all the time. This strategy allows you to compete on price, but still close at a higher average, because your good can be the price competition, right, with the other contractors, but your better is better, and your best is where you're getting, having the most margins. And I thought that was a real interesting one, that now you can frame the conversation. Well, this is why. Yeah, that's exactly. It's probably what's included in our good program, what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what are they going to install versus you, and how are they going to do all the things? Is their warranty going to live up to what your warranty is? What shingle are they using? All of those differentiators really can shine in that good, better, best situation. So,
like, and just think how you buy stuff. You want all the guessing work to be done. Like, you want someone to do the thinking for you. Honestly, I'm shopped that way. I'm like, just give me a pros and cons list and let me pick. So if you are creating the comparison just for your company, automatically by default, if they already like you, they're going to be like, okay, I'm just going to go with one of these packages. I'm not going to worry about anyone else. They just want to compare you to you at that point. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get them to compare you to you, not you to the 3 other companies that came in.
That's right.
That's a great way to do it, is by here. I'm simplifying it for you. I've laid it all out. You just pick your package. It takes away the competition, because you're now making it so the comparison's only your company.
Yes, that's awesome. And I'm one of those terrible people that needs to know all of the data and all of the information, and I'm going to line by line everything. And I'm a terrible person, and it'll probably take me 6 months just to make a decision, just because I overthink everything in that. But that is a huge takeaway. That first, a dedicated sales team is, you have a much better chance of succeeding if you have a dedicated sales team, or if you are the owner. This is, it starts off when you're self-employed, and you're doing so many things yourself. That understanding that that someone needs to be dedicated to selling. Yeah. Right. Even as you're growing your business, if you're moving from, you're doing sales and production. Now, if you want to be that salesperson, you know where to hire next, right? Hire on the production side. If you want to be more on the production side, you can hire that sales side. So having that self-awareness, is also real interesting. And then the good, better, best allows you to not compete with other people and compete with yourself. I love the way you said that. That's awesome. So let's move on to the production. Length of time from lead to final invoice. There was a lot of interesting information there. Higher profitability companies take longer to complete jobs because they take bigger jobs. I think that was one of the observations in there.
I think bigger jobs is part of it, but also kind of goes back to what we addressed earlier. How do you define a lead? If someone came in, it's like, I'm ready to have a roof, let's schedule an appointment. So this is something we want to iterate on next year. Let's get really nitty gritty, and the difference between bigger jobs and smaller jobs. Hey, when you have a repair job, how long does it take you to have someone raise their hand and close it? If you have a full replacement, how long does that take? So
maybe even commercial versus residential would be a good breakup in there too, because, commercial it's a lot. There's bigger decisions being made on capital, the capitalization of these buildings and all this stuff that, it's much more intensive.
Yeah. Commercial and insurance depends on how you define close, is until you get the paycheck. So this opened up a lot more questions for me than answers, to be honest, but I'm glad, because it's okay, now we can get really nitty gritty next time we ask, Okay, how are your canvassing stuff do compared to your referral stuff? Is that a shorter time? Like, let's get really nitty gritty on what exactly is closing quicker. So
That's what's fun. That's really what's cool about this is like now there's like you have a whole bunch of information, but it's like, ooh, well, what about that? What about that? And it's like, what about this in there? And that, so I'm sure that this will continue to get better over time. Let's see what other stuff. Number of software tools used, right? Yeah. So, I think there were there was about 15% of people that only used one software tool, but 40% used 2 to 3. I could see that easily. I see a lot of people in that 4 to 5 range. You said there's 27% of people there. So nearly half of all roofers use 2 to 3 software tools on a regular basis.
Yep. And this, selfishly, from Job Nimbus side, it's reading that. I'm like, okay. And as a team, we've gone over this, as exec team, we've gone over this, like, okay, well, what are we missing to cut out 2 to 3 of those extra software tools? Like, how do we make it where it's actually just that one? And there's so many pieces part of business, and there's so many amazing tools out there. So that's a big ask for sure. But I know when we do software audits, especially as the bigger you get, you seem to have more software that you manage. Most of the stuff, it's like this good question of, do I actually need that?
Yeah.
Do I actually need that? And hopefully, depending on who you've purchased, as people start expanding and iterating and developing, you can shorten that list. But it does take some self-awareness to go, okay, do I need another software for that? Or do I just need to get deep dive on what I have already? Like there's some, and sometimes you do need to get another software. I'm not saying it's bad to do that, but try to have some self-awareness on, okay, can I do this here well, or do I actually need new software? And that's our question, especially as you get bigger, you're just trying to get convenience.
For sure. Because it really gets messy when there's a lot of people using a lot of different softwares. That's where things could get messy. So let's move into like the cash flow stuff. The annual revenue, kind of companies with poor reviews are 2 times as likely to earn below $250,000 a year than companies with good reviews, right? So that was one of the interesting things. Like, if you don't have good reviews, you're not making money.
Yeah, and it's really entertaining for me because we have a very optimistic industry, which is great. We're a bunch of dreamers, we're a bunch of entrepreneurs. That's where we want to be. That's part of the reason we all love in this industry so much. And I'm not trying to spoil her, but the future outlook, where we ask where you think you're going to be at in 2023, the mass majority of them, even the ones that are less than 250, we're saying that they're going to be 20 million or more in 1 year. So it's kind of this, okay, how? Like, how are you going to get up that fast? So it's really interesting because these are the same people that are saying they didn't do as well this last year, but they're projecting massive, massive growth in the next year, which is really cool. But why? Why do you think that? How are you doing it? What are the changes?
We have a lot of those conversations too. And sometimes talking about marketing budgets, going back to that a little bit, it's like when you start talking about the marketing budget that you will need to get from 2 million to 20 million in a year, and the amount of people and processes that you have to have in place to not fall apart completely when you do that, it's outrageous. But you made it. That is a good statement, that there's a lot. Entrepreneurs are dreamers, man. We're like, and have outstanding faith in what's going to happen, right? Like, we're just like, yeah, I could do it. We're doing it this year.
Yeah, I did a mind state survey, and it's just like kind of what motivates you and what you really believe. And this industry, and you can tell me if you think this is wrong. To me, this is right on the money. It's not if I succeed, it's when and how I succeed. Like, it's not a question of if you're going to knock this out of the park. It's just what exactly is going to get me there. And I love that. I think that's the right attitude to have. But kind of what you said earlier with the reviews, it's that challenge of taking it in chunks, because it's really easy to go, oh, they have 350 reviews. I'm going to get 500. Okay, fantastic goal. Let's make that your rock. Let's make that your quarterly goal, whatever it is. Now let's take the baby steps back, because it's really easy to get frustrated when your goal is here and there's nothing in between, no milestones in between. So it's like a game. You have to validate your journey all the time, especially as a business owner, because you're going to have rough times. So you need to be able to put in and appreciate the other milestones.
I heard something great recently from Alex Hermosi, a clip from him where he was saying, we in business, a lot of times we'll put finite rules on an infinite game.
I like that. That's really cool.
Right. So now the business is an infinite game. It's not, there is no end. Like you get to 20 million in revenue and it ends. Business is infinite. It's staying in business. Staying in business is what you're doing. So there is no end. Now there are milestones. You mentioned that where you use that word milestones. So now you can develop milestones of where you want to hit in your business along the entire journey. But this is an infinite game.
Yeah.
There are roofing companies that are over 100 years old in this country, right? They are still here and still working and still producing and still doing a great job. And what it was 100 years ago is not even close to what it is today. It's a completely different thing. Or even a family business that was started 40, 50 years ago by the grandfather, and then the father took over, and then the son and daughter took over now, and right, like it's an infinite thing. It can live forever. But one of the things that keeps it living forever is profit margin.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that was noticed here, it was about 31% of companies were in the 31 to 40%. This is gross. I'm assuming this was a gross margin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing, again, I want to dive into next time is like, okay, what's your actual net profitability percent? Because it's really easy to look at a job, be like, oh, sweet, I paid this much for materials and then got this much from this job. Okay, how much did you pay your subcontractors? How much did you pay for salaries? It's sometimes it's like exciting but deflating because my mom has her master's in like financial planning and financial therapy. She's crazy money genius. So I remember like, oh, I'm going to make this much. She's like, and then here's taxes, and then here's your expenses, and then here's your saving for the future. I'm like, oh, that's not as exciting.
Oh.
Like it gets more exciting because then you can have other levers to pull. It's like, okay, well, let's budget a little better. Let's get more efficient in this process. So it's good to have that full picture because if you're just looking at the gross, you're going to miss a lot of efficiency problems.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And that net profit margin, will depend on where you're at in your business. A lot of times in business, a lot of times we'll have to invest in our business and then realize the gain from it, right? So 1 year may have a slimmer net profit margin, but that was because you made an investment in your marketing and your people and new trucks and, different things to that, equipters and catch-alls and all kinds of fun stuff that you can then use into the future and that will increase your profit margin into your software, into all of these things, into your automations, into all of that investment that can be paid off later. So that would be an interesting one to me, year over year, how people change too. But
yeah, that's good. And that's a good call out because we've all been guilty of this, is that jumping over dollars to pick up pennies. If you become hyper focused on how much you're spending and what the return is, you miss out on the opportunity to grow. So it's really, it's all of this. When you're looking at all the data, it's like, okay, where's my self-awareness exercise? Where do I actually want to go next? And does that mean this year I can't worry so much about my net profit margin because I'm investing in my marketing and in this and this? So it's that bigger question that we have to answer. And then that way you're measuring the right number.
For sure. Another thing that was interesting is being able to take payments electronically, offering financing. I see it so much. If you can offer financing, you can close at a higher rate, right? No one saves money to buy a roof. No one wants to buy a roof. Like it's not what it's just not how it works. So offering financing, all of almost 74% of the high revenue companies offered financing, right? So just get financing, offer financing, right?
Yeah, offer financing. And there's so many great partners out there, honestly. And like, I think right now we're using Sunlight, and there's just really cool options that make it a lot easier. And big heavy hit on the forms of payment. I'm still shocked how many contractors I personally interacted with that only take a check. And it's like, can I Venmo you? Can I use my credit card? I want points. Like, find ways to get creative. And
I
then
want my miles. That's right.
I'm okay with my ACH. I just don't want to. And like you then have to take the checks and drive to the bank, and that's time and that's money and that's a lot of stuff. So again, that kind of what we've talked about.
Yep.
That take the time to set up that stuff at the beginning, because it's going to save you so much time and money later.
For sure. And then, making sure that, having these options for payments will reduce the amount of past due accounts receivable that you have out there, right? Being the ease of collecting that cash from people, it will continuously reduce that, because if you put barriers in front of them on how to pay you, they're gonna not pay you as often, or it's gonna take a little bit more, right? I don't even know where my checkbook is, Kaili. Like, I think it's in the safe somewhere, but I'd have to go dig for it.
Yeah, I don't even have a checkbook. I don't have a checkbook. I went to the bank and had them print me off 5. I still have 2 left. I think I did that. So it just happens.
That's right. So yeah, those are some amazing things. Now let's move on to the next thing in communication, because I think this is where communication is what separates companies from each other. So companies that have a lack of communication usually have lower reviews, not as good reviews. I see online more times than not negative reviews around things like, I called them and they never came out to do the estimate.
Yeah, you get negative reviews just for not calling them back.
Exactly. Or they came out, did an estimate, and never called me back. Like, I couldn't get back on the phone with them. That communication is so, so important. And this is my favorite thing, right? It's like, on the inbound side, when people are communicating with our clients at Roofer Marketers and Job Nimbus, right? I would say it's between 70 and 80% are inbound phone calls. People, when they have a need for your services, they're picking up the phone, getting back on the phone with them, or at least, they have their phone in their hand, texting them, right? Between phone and text. Email it came out higher than I thought in the study, that people are good with email, because I know those crazy people. I am not one of them, but I know those crazy people. My friend Josh, I saw, had almost 85,000 unread emails in his inbox. And I had to walk away because I started twitching a little bit. It was too much for me. So it's amazing to me that email is still what was kind of interesting to me. But what the observation is that multiple forms of communication, right? The email goes out, then the text message says, I sent you an email, and then a phone call comes the day after saying, making sure you got that if I haven't heard back from you, right? Yep. That is such a huge, can have a huge impact. What were some of the things that stood out to you around the communication stuff?
None of it was a surprise.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to dive in not only the communication on your leads, because we see that, right? We see no one even called me back, but also the communication that happens during your job and how that actually works. I'd like to split them in the future to see.
Yes.
Because the biggest complaint that I see outside of they didn't even call me back is I had no idea when they were showing up. I had no idea when this was going to happen. And honestly, I think that's the biggest part, because, you have the saying, we all have a bad contractor story. It's almost always around communication or ghosting or something like that. And there's some total jerks in the industry. I'm not saying that, but you usually just get too busy and you lose track of all the stuff you have going on. So you're like, oh, I'm going to show up today. Never mind. I'm going to show up at this time. Never mind. Just even if that's true, even if that scheduling stuff doesn't change, a short text saying, I am so sorry. This is this. I will be here at this time instead. People are fine with that. They just want to be communicated with.
That's right.
And that's the whole point. And that's the communication piece is so essential, because in my mind, what Job Nimbus and what Roofer Marketers and what all these amazing companies are doing is, I don't want people to constantly say the bad contractor story. I want everyone to have a good contractor story. And I want these businesses to be the good contractor story, and communication is such a big piece of that. And knowing what's happening and having it simple to understand and making it easy for them to talk to you and to know what's happening and to pay you and to review you, like making that easy and communicating, making it clear is such a key part of that good contractor story. You can't miss the communication part. You have to take the time to set it up right.
For sure. And it is a lot of time is spent on that upfront communication, like qualifying the lead, getting to the appointment. But it's that signed contract through completion of the job that makes the most impact on the long-term value of those customers.
And that gives you that referral, and that gives you that word of mouth.
Exactly. And so the way I've been kind of framing it to people is, if your customer has to wonder, you lost, right? Or you are losing, and you're losing trust points every time, right? So if they have to wonder, they told me that they were going to order materials and let me know when that happened. I wonder when that's going to happen. The second that is in their mind, you're losing. The second they're wondering, are they going to show up for this appointment? The second they're wondering, I wonder when my job is going to get scheduled. The second they're wondering any of that, and that is, back to the early part of our conversation about automating so many of these things, right? You can have these triggers in your workflows, add a tag, boom, communication goes out. Like, it's not something that can take up additional time and resources in your company. You just have to build it out. The next thing I want to talk about is the length of time to contact new leads. This is it right here. People do not want and will not wait around for you to call them back, right? It is outrageous to me that 5 to 6% of people contact people back in 3 to 4 days. That is outrageous. I guarantee that I could take those people and put them in the revenue numbers and determine their revenue based on that. Like, that is outrageous. So one of the things that I've said many, many times on, when we do a lot of trainings is, if you don't follow up with a lead within 5 minutes, you have an 80%, there was a study that you have an 80% less chance of ever getting a hold of that person. Not an 80% less chance of talking, like ever getting a hold of that person. They're not even going to answer the phone anymore because you didn't communicate quickly. And what did they do? They called the next one, and they called the next one, and they called the next one. So within that 5 minutes, someone was on the phone with them. So that length of time is so, so important.
Yeah, you got to grab people while you're top of mind. And this is why people get frustrated with Facebook ads, but to me, it makes perfect sense. When they fill out a lead form on Facebook, this is probably one of the few lead sources that most people have where people are actively searching for a solution. They ran into something.
Yes.
So if you got to grab them fast because you're at that moment top of mind, and that's very, very short window. And you have Google ads, you have Google search, they're looking for a solution. When you're on Facebook, when they're seeing your car on the road, they're not looking for a solution. They ran into something. So you got to take advantage, especially the people just running into you. You got to get it while you're still top of mind, because it's going to go away really quick.
For sure. And then another part of the survey that you guys did was around team and culture. And there was some really key takeaways there. And I want to kind of frame it. So it was really that there was a lot around, you have to look at what you're paying in terms of salary and commissions to make sure that you're competitive in your market. You want to consider offering benefits, 401k, to help attract and retain people. In that, we're in a kind of a different, it's a different world now. People have options. Way more options. I know that the kind of the stigma on the younger generation is that they're lazy. I don't believe that. I think they have more options. My father worked at a mining company in northern Minnesota. It had full benefits, all kind of, great pay, good full benefits for that area. But that was one of the very few options to have that. Now there are so many options to have that. And if you want to attract A players want a lot of these things. You'll be able to develop more efficiencies on your team by having better people and paying them more in benefits and giving them all this stuff. And boy, it's much nicer to work with smart people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So you're dealing with options. So yeah, you kind of have to have what in our mind now is the bare minimum. But the other piece of this that I thought was really interesting was like the performance tracking, because I have a younger marketing team. They're all in their young 20s. And that's a challenge in and of itself. But it's really interesting because we had a major culture shift a few months ago in marketing, new leadership, all that kind of thing. And I watched it, they all have done so well and they were all really good performers. But I changed two of them. I had massive change to how I track their success and their numbers.
Yeah.
These are completely different employees. One of them I genuinely thought was going to quit within like a quarter. She's a freaking rock star and she's probably my best employee on my team, just because she's like, I know I'm making an impact. Yep. I know if I'm succeeding at my job, I can see immediately where I'm contributing to the business. And it's really frustrating when we have like crew events and we talk to contractors and they're like, how do I measure this person? How does the office manager know if they're doing a good job? I'm like, okay, we got to choose your North Star metric for this role and we got to work our way back. And that's the thing. It's like you said, there's plenty of options and people want to go where they feel like they're making a real impact, and not necessarily for a social cause or anything like that, but you want to be somewhere where you're valuable, right? Most of the A players don't want to just be in a job where they clock in and clock out and they're done. They want to be somewhere they're making movement. So you got to have the right tracking and the right numbers in place so they can see immediately if they're doing well or not.
Yeah.
And that's hard. And that gets tricky with some metrics, but at the end of the day, that's what's going to make your right players stay A players, when they can see the impact they're making immediately and they don't need to ask you if they're doing a good job. They can see right there, I know I'm doing a good job because I'm making this and this impact.
Yep. That's awesome. And then you'd already mentioned in kind of the future outlook of these companies that there was like a lot of people that earned less than 2 million and said that they would do more than 20 million, which is just outrageous, right? Small incremental growth is really what's going to happen in your business. So, getting above that, there's that magical mark around the 2 million area that you really start to have a little bit more of a business. You have a little bit more revenue coming in that you can make some investments into those key employees. You can make some investments into your marketing, into your software, into all of these things to do better. But what is, so now what, Kaili, now what?
So the whole reason we did this performance report was because our mission statement is to make contractors heroes. And honestly, to make people best in class and help them be successful. So the whole point of the benchmark was to look through, see where you fall, and see where you are in each category. Are you best in class in marketing, but you're not in production yet? Cool. Now you kind of know where to focus. Where's your baseline? And if you don't know your baseline, let's get your baseline. And so now what? It's when people are looking through this report, they go know really quickly where they sit. So it's kind of, okay, so what's next? What do I have to fix to become best in class? So pick whatever section it is that you're weakest in or that you feel like is the easiest to fix, because sometimes it's nice to grab the lowest hanging fruit. You're like, oh, I'm a little off in communication, but I just have to do this and I'll be best in class. Perfect. Do that first. So pick where you're not best in class where you want to be and deep dive in. Go talk to people who are experts in that field or experts in that. Like talk to another production manager, talk to another business owner. There's so many. This is one thing I really love about this industry. There's all these groups and there's all these meetings and there's all these partners and there's all this free training. Go figure it out. If you're struggling in marketing, hey, look, Jim's available. There's trainings, like there's a podcast. Like go deep dive into where you want to be best in class at and start from there and start moving.
Awesome. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you would like to generate more revenue through your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com to get a copy of the book, The Best Known Roofer. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. Thanks for listening.